Hello and welcome back to Inquisitor Martyr. Last time we finished the prophecy storyline, and now we'll start with one of the Chaos Undivided storylines, why not?
Priest, I'm in the Underhive to investigate the case of mass disappearances. Talk to me.
Information schematics received from Adeptus Arbites operatives have been analyzed. The abduction cases indicate cult activity. Data coverage is insufficient, but this is the location where most abductees disappeared.
Can you scan the area? Until now, only the Underhive has been affected, but the abduction is beginning to develop the stability of the
I just realized there's a typo. It's area, but it says aerial.
I will follow the trails into the Underhive. Contact me when you have something.
Between episodes I was doing a bit of just tinkering and running a few minor random missions for fun. And I actually got this new Inoculator. I had to reroll the first ability and got the max shield, so I stopped there and then rerolled the loot quality a few times. I figured giving me more shields wouldn't be a bad idea. I kind of regret not going Puritan just for the free shields, because I think that's a Puritan perk you unlock, but what can I do? It would be kind of broken if you could go all the way to Radical and all the way back to Puritan on one character. And this does kind of incentivize someone being like, hey, pick a build and stick with it. But I very well could have picked Puritan and never gotten these items that are like, hey, here's extra shields. Or I could have got one way before I got the ability to get the shields, and then I'd be holding on to something that gets really weak for one trait that's not really worth keeping at that point. So, in the end, it's one of those things where it's like, yeah, it sucks. I can't really do anything about it. Not gonna sit here and be like, oh, it's unfair. Just kind of the curse of things. I was talking with a friend of mine about looter shooters, and I had said that I feel like that whole genre is kind of in this state of arrested development. It can't and doesn't go anywhere. Nobody's really tried to mix up the formula at all. And while yes, it works, it's also becoming very stagnant. The only real difference is you look at like Borderlands versus Destiny. Destiny went in the direction of like MMO light. You know, they have dungeons, they have raids, they have all the stuff you see in MMOs, or at least most things, but they never fully commit to going full MMO. You know, you don't have a clan house or clan like building players can hang out in. There's no player housing. There's no trade. Minor things like that that I think would improve the game. But you have that, and then you have standard Borderlands stuff. And Anthem went in the same direction as Destiny. They just honestly had way too many issues at launch, which is sad, because I think it would have been a good game they just got bogged down with so many issues, and based on the loading time issues, very bad optimization. That and an overabundance of loading screens. But I was thinking about that, and I was like, you know, looter shooter, the Diablo style ARPG is in a similar state where nobody's really mixed it up, except off the top of my head, this game. Like, Martyr decided to say, hey, I mean, Martyr and Path of Exile did interesting things. Path of Exile saying, hey, your skills are tied to gems you socket into gear you're gonna depend on, you know, what sockets you get. While this was like, hey, your guns and swords have pre-baked, like baked in abilities, but then you can modify certain aspects of them. And then you have, you know, the slots, which I think were a very interesting idea. Allows players a lot of customization between Archaeotech shards and code psalms, and the fact that the psalms can then be combined to produce additional effects. Admittedly, it should have been outright stated, instead of being some hidden thing that's like, oh, if you do the research, you can find the info on it. It should have been right in your face. Yes, it is a bit of, you know, holding your hand, one would argue, but I feel like even just having a little guide somewhere in here that's like, hey, these things combined do this, isn't that bad. That's useful. You know, that's not babying a player, that's just being real. And being like, hey, here's a potential thing you might be interested in. It will give you extra abilities or extra traits. Consider it. The unfortunate part is, as cool as these mechanics are, I don't think we'll ever see them in another game. Just because, for some reason, a lot of studios don't seem to do research or really look at what competition has done. One thing I've noticed with a lot of studios is they'll look at what's the big successful thing. You know, 15, 20 years ago, even further than that, games had to make themselves stand out and be unique. And that was the big thing. You know, they might have a general concept, you know, oh, platformers are big. We're going to make a platformer. But then you look at, you know, Commander Keen, side-scrolling platformer, little bit of just goofy stuff in it. Good game. Then you look at mid-2000s, you know, you still got Mario games, but you got like Tak and the Power of Juju, you have Ty the Tasmanian Tiger, you have Crash, you have Jak and Daxter, you have a variety of games that each, while they're platformers, oh, Sly Cooper, that's another one, but they were, for the most part, different. Now, it's very, you know, paint by numbers, we have to have this, I always harp on it, but Battle Royales. Battle Royales are a prime example of everybody shoehorning something in, not to stand out, but to look the same. And it's always been a weird thing to me because it's basic market stuff. You know, if I have spent, let's take Warzone. Let's say I've spent $100 on skins. I haven't because I'm not insane, but let's say I have. I've spent $100 on skins. Why am I going to go to another game that I don't have those items? Why would I go, oh, okay, I'm going to go play Fortnite. I'm going to go play whatever other, Vampire the Masquerade Blood Hunt. You can argue, oh, well, it's a different experience, to a degree, but a lot of the core mechanics are the same, and they don't really stand out. Vampire, their big thing, third person. And you have NPCs that kind of roam the area. Some give you buffs, some are like cops. Interesting idea. That said, I would have gone a completely different direction. But in the end, it's still just a battle royale, and you're already putting yourself behind the 8 ball, because there's already established games. If they wanted to stand out, what I would have done is looked at games like PlanetSide. Multiple factions fighting over territory, large player numbers. What I'd do is say, okay, you know, you got a character, go onto a server.
Teleport beacon in range.
You'd have to have a lot of the smaller servers, but you can just spin up VMs for that. That's not that difficult. And instead of 3 factions, 4, whatever, you have the Sabbat versus the Camarilla, the 2 main factions in Vampire. You do that,
There is nothing else to learn.
and utilize that layout.
Of the Underhive. I must press.
But by using that layout, you can then have a faction, like just a 2-faction conflict.
I have arrived at the location. This must be the lair of the cult.
But by having the 2 factions, you can have a 2-faction conflict, and then with Vampire you could say, oh, well, we're gonna have, since it'll be, in theory, lower player numbers, part because lore-wise it makes sense to do lower player numbers, and also because you'd have NPCs. Random NPCs that, if they spot your conflict, can alert cops, you can get attacked by NPC third parties. This would allow players to then, you know, do that. You have this conflict going on, you have to kind of hide it. Is it a battle royale? No. But it fits far better in the vampire set. Like, I don't know who sat down and was like, ah yes, Vampire the Masquerade. The game and franchise where being spotted gets you killed, and it's a lot of subterfuge and intrigue. Let's make a battle royale. You know, the genre known for subtlety and not running out into the street with an Uzi and spraying wildly. And it's like, oh, they had a feature where it marks you if you break the Masquerade. I'm like, you're already to a degree breaking the Masquerade by just going balls to the walls with guns in the street. At least with like smaller isolated conflicts, it would make a bit more sense than just going full bore. Cause like, what story do you have to explain that? Like, you really don't. At least smaller conflicts over a larger map for territory control, it makes sense as like, oh, you know, the Sabbat and Camarilla are always in conflict. The Sabbat believe that they need to essentially become warriors for, I think, Cain when the time comes, when I think it's Gehenna occurs. Like, that makes sense. It doesn't really make sense, which was like, yeah, everybody just fight each other, and whoever wins, you're the cool guy. I'm just glad there isn't a 40K battle royale. I say that now, and I absolutely loathe the fact that there is probably someone somewhere trying to pitch that idea. Mostly because it's stupid. And it doesn't make sense. I mean, hell, PlanetSide tried to BR to a degree, was like squad based. And at that point I was like, why? Why any of this? Jumping back to 40K, the one thing with like the looter shooter genre that really surprised me is hired gun, because I wish the devs had kept working on the game after launch. I get it, they're small, they need to keep making money, making stuff, but they were on the cusp of something, because they had the looter aspect started with the rarities and all that, but then it just fell short. I mean, I have the entire series here on my channel if you haven't watched it, but they had like archaeotech stuff. Oh, you can put radiation damage on a gun, you can put toxin, you can put all this on, but it was never really explained what it did, or if it did anything. There was... well, what's it? There was rarities. You could get like relic or archaeotech weapons and all this stuff. And it was really cool. But once again, it didn't get fully fleshed out. They had a brilliant system going. Or another part, I was playing The Ascent. Great game. A friend had gotten it and I was hanging out and we were playing that. And in the game, when you travel to certain areas, it's like, oh yeah, there might be a bounty here. And the bounty will just be a random guy with like a name and whatnot. You kill him, you collect the bounty, you go to this bar in the main area, and you can hand in the bounty for money. And I sat there as I was playing this with my friend, and I said, this is what hired gun should have had. You know, you're a bounty hunter, but you collect no bounties. You spend more time fighting, like, oh, we need to blow up the food supply or the ammo supply of this gang. Okay, cool. I'd like to collect bounties. Have a random chance of a named character or like a semi-random gen character popping up. They could have easily done DLC relating to the Redemptionists, to House Van Saar, to any of the other houses. They could have expanded so many things. They could have done an Ash Wastes DLC. They could have added so many different things. And I hope someone else does it. I hope some other enterprising developer gets their hands on Necromunda. They go, hey, let's do something in the spirit of hired gun. You know, you're a bounty hunter. Bounty hunters are a big thing in Necromunda. Let's do a proper, you know, to a degree, looter shooter. Expand the weapon customization. There's so much that could be done that would be amazing.
Spark of the machine spirit detected.
And I think it's a lot of potential that just was not fully capitalized on.
As you wish, Inquisitor.
Because it's my curse, I'll admit. I can see potential in damn near everything. You know, it's not hard to look at a game and see what went wrong, in my eyes. You know, there's always things that could have gone further. Hired gun being a prime example. There's so much. Because, I mean, it was essentially the framework of a Doom Diablo hybrid. And that, I think, would be amazing. The fun looting of Diablo, because there's a part of me that just really loves getting loot, and then the high-speed combat of Doom. You know, I got the brutal executions, just darting around, just blasting people. That is a recipe for success. And if you want to be real ambitious, let's stick with Necromunda as an example, you can introduce bigger enemies. Sentinels? You could have Sentinel enemies you're fighting, you could do a lot of stuff like that. Vehicles are a prime option. Hell, do a General 40K one, play as a Space Marine. An Imperial Knight, some of the smaller ones, you come up like a standard Space Marine, they're gonna be tall enough to, I'd say, come up to like maybe shin height, maybe a little less. But you could fight them. If we're being real, you could fight an Imperial Knight. It's definitely not fully canon accurate and lore accurate, simply because, I mean, the lore damage is very wishy-washy. I mean, a bolter fires essentially like 50 cal gyro jets. In theory, you should be just obliterating everything you see with bolters. But you can't feasibly do it because obviously then you'd invalidate a lot of content. Aww. Oh cool, it did die.
Can get worse, it seems.
Inquisitor, numerically.
Strange.
But yeah, I feel like there's a lot of potential. Wish the devs had really stuck to it, because they could have definitely recovered from some of the less than exemplary reviews that they got, especially at launch. Like, a lot of people dunked on the game. I won't say they were wrong in doing so. It was somewhat earned. I mean, look at my videos as a prime example. Some of those spots where enemies would spawn, the game's frame rate would just go into freefall. You know, those are core issues that should have been stamped out before launch. That's why you do QA, that's why you do early access, that's why you do betas. That's why you do something. And the fact that once you beat the story, there really was an incentive to play further. The game was done, you could get better gear, but it was just run missions for factions that give you nothing unique at the end. But that is all for now. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure to hit the like button, it helps out the channel a lot, and if you haven't already, make sure to hit the subscribe button. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.